a premier video show where we share the success journeys of the elite and learn about the pivotal moments and decisions that shaped their paths to prominence. I'm your host, Nancy Erickson. Today, my esteemed guest is Glenn Capelli. A Western Australian, Glenn has presented messages of dynamic leadership thinking in 33 countries and in over 170 cities. His award-winning USA cable television series called Born to Learn aired weekly to over 26 million households throughout the USA. And his Thinking Caps radio show aired on the Australia's ABC, Radio National, and Melbourne's 3AW. An author, songwriter, triple Hall of Fame life membership, the Professional Speakers Association, and an ongoing example of a lifelong learner. I'm happy to welcome you, Glenn.
Good morning and g'day to everyone.
Yeah, it's good morning to you, and it's the end of the workday for me. So thank you for getting up before dawn for us to record this. I appreciate it. So, Glenn, you've done a lot in your life. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your growing up years. Where are you from, and what was your family life like?
And it always does start with the geography, I think. Here in Australia, as happens all around the world, we often acknowledge the Indigenous to be able to start our story. And one of the wonderful things, yes, I've presented in 170 cities and what have you, but I've also presented in the 14 areas known as the lands. And the lands are the most remote communities in Australia, making them some of the remote communities in the world. And when you're invited to sit in country from the Indigenous Australians, it's an absolute honour. Wow. And I think that's what we're all born to it. We're born to that place, that space that we came to. And I came to the planet in the red dirt of Kalgoorlie, edge of the desert, edge of the outback, if you like. And anytime I am reconnected to Earth and reconnected to space, Kalgoorlie's got big skies. I feel that I'm at home, and it's that thing. I think that's actually helped me in life. And anytime I feel challenged, I look to the sky, I look to the blue sky, I look to the stars, the countries that excited me, traveling through East Africa, Arizona, New Mexico, the Sinai deserts, you know.
Yeah.
Look to the space, look to the sky, and when you're troubled, it's like, and I think that starting point at Kalgoorlie, later in life, I read Sheldon Kopp, a wonderful psychologist, and he said this. He said, on this hand, the whole universe was created just for Nancy. The whole universe was created just for you, Glenn. And in this hand, we're nothing but dirt and ash. And I think that's
right.
Somewhere. You know, it's a nice to remember to look up at the sky and go, hey, yeah, I'm a tiny speck. But
let me just jump in here and say it's interesting that you say look up, because when I look up at home, I don't see much stars because we've got a lot of light pollution in the city. But a week from, I think it's coming up. It'll be past tense by the time this airs, but we have a total eclipse of the sun coming through our city again. And this is the second time in about 12 years. I was in Ireland last time when it came, so I was disappointed, but I'll be here. But, looking up and the magnificence of creation and all, you do feel like a speck.
And it's a wonderful point, Nance, because Johann Hari, when he talks about lost connections, if we lose connection to the sky, living in, vast cities and lots of lights, we lose connection to natural light, to sky, to dirt, to the groundedness of understanding country. If our Indigenous here in Australia, if they're incarcerated, imprisoned, and they cannot look to open space, it's suffering. It really is suffering. And for me, it's that wonderful reconnection to country. And it's not just a token thing we should do to start a conference. It's acknowledging country and acknowledging elders. It's an in-heart thing for our own health, mental, physical, spiritual, everything. So I'm fortunate I was born in space and born in Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So it's so funny, like, when you talk about the indigenous people, if they're incarcerated, they can't see the sky, so that's it's torture, it's really suffering. I have a funny story to tell you. My husband he's retired from his profession, but he's an international landscape photographer. He travels all over the world to do landscape photography. Um, and he was in Iceland once, and there were a lot of Chinese tourists there at the time. And so they usually like to go to remote areas and take pictures, but for some reason they were in a more public area this time. And he was observing two Chinese women who were walking across the grass to this viewpoint, and they could barely walk, and they were holding on to each other. And it was like, it seemed like they were just not stable. And so he was talking to the guide, and he goes, "What's going on with those women?" And he said, "You know what? It's not uncommon for visitors from Shanghai to have never been on grass before. They have never been on earth before." And so, I don't know, that just blew me away. I mean, I like to be barefoot when I'm in the grass, and all, but our connection to the earth, to the sky, is a really important part of who we are. It's hard to be a fully orbed human being if you can't take in those natural aspects. So, yeah, and I love how you're acknowledging your indigenous people. I appreciate that you started out that way, Glenn.
Yeah, and every time I do a presentation wherever I'm in the world, I do start with an acknowledgement of elders, but it's a little bit different. I start by saying I'd like to acknowledge the elders who have made me who I am. I'd
Yeah.
like to acknowledge the elders who have made you, every audience member, who you are, and acknowledge those elders that walk this planet way before we were even thought of. And it's not just again a token thing. I mean, my mum, my dad, they're no longer with us, but they're always with us.
Of course.
And they feature in every presentation I ever do. The thing. And as I talk, the less messages I've learned from my nana and my papa and from my dad and my mum, and people can walk their path of the messages they've learnt from their grandparents. And if they don't have grandparents, those respected elders in their life, or those people that acted that role. And I think, I'm a presenter who, some presenters will go, okay, think like this, but hey, think about this. Here's my message to you. Well, no, there's a message to you from inside you, and let's find it. And that's the thing, that within every human being, there's these incredible stories.
Believe me, I certainly subscribe to that, which is what my work is, right? So, so you've lived and worked all over the world, haven't you, Glenn?
Yes, I have. And it was interesting how the two phases. So the traveling around the world with a backpack, and doing all sorts of little jobs and whatever I could do. And then the second part, being an international traveller and speaker and going to countries. So it's an interesting world, how I got to be where I am. And I love your idea of little pivotal moments in life. So, and sometimes what seems like a huge setback in life is actually the door wide opening. It's the sky appearing for you. But at the time, it didn't seem like it. So all I wanted to be when I was a kid was a professional footballer, Australian rules football.
Like
I wanted to kick
soccer
a footy.
football, you mean? Not American football.
Australian rules. It's
Yeah.
a crazy oval shaped ball. It's a different game.
Yeah.
It's quite wonderful. I saw it as art. And I was captain of a footy team. I was captain of a premiership team when I was just 16 years of age, at a state level. It was huge. And then a person ran across my knee in a game of football, and they said, "You'll never play footy again." And I said I would, and I got back after 2 years, but I could never have. And the second time my knee went, that was it. I was never going to be.
How's that knee now?
That knee now means that instead of running, I walk.
Yeah.
But the thing is that at the time, I really thought that was devastating.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, one of the greatest things that, we now know in psychology, there's an area that we never ever looked at. And now we know it's one of the most important areas, and it's grit. when you
Great.
get to grit it, when you get to persevere, when you get to find your way through, when you get really
Grit.
challenged. And I was born deaf in all upper registers. I have inner ear things that they cannot mend. So I can hear all sounds, but not really high sounds. So, but it's not why I love sign language, the language of our deaf communities. But I love signing because it's a beautiful physical learning language. So the physicality of looking to the sky, it would be this. The physicality of grit would be this, finding stuff in your heart and finding your way through. And I think for all of us, sometimes what seems like an incredible kick in the guts that we'll never recover from is really our way to find our grit in it and to grit our way through, which then opens up a whole other world, So and I think that's keeping the hope as you're going through the grit. I didn't know that when I was 16, but what I went through at 16, 17 and 18 helped me learn it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your travels. When did you leave Australia for the first time, and where have you been since then?
Yep, in my university years, I always hitched my way around Australia, and that was partly because I'd read Jack Kerouac on the road far too many times. So I hitched around, and then I became a teacher. I taught English, history, and economics at a handpicked staff for a government school, an amazing environment. Even though we hadn't talked about learning organisations and high performance workplaces, I got to teach at Wanneroo Senior High School with a handpicked staff, and it was a learning organisation. It was a high performance environment. It was incredible. But I knew that I wanted to travel. I knew I'd been at school, then at university, then back to school as a teacher, and I needed my world to open up. So I left Australia thinking I'd go travelling for 3 months, and 7 years later, pretty well, I came home. And 7 years with a backpack. It was an amazing experience. I got to live on a kibbutz in the north of Israel. I had a roommate, a Ukrainian basketball champion who became and still remains my best buddy.
Wow.
And the things you learn, I spent a whole year there. Then I went on to American summer camps and different things around the world. Got back to the north of Israel to visit my friend when I was about 28, 29 years of age by this stage. And Zhenya, my Ukrainian friend, he says to me, Glenn, we have a party for you. And he's invited all of his friends around. And in Israel, there's no light parties. It's straight into the guts of it. So he sits me down and he says, Glenn, my friends want to know, you are bum. You are bum. You got nothing. You got the money in your backpack, and that's it. What's your insurance for the future? And then they sit back and fold their arms and they're listening. And it was a wonderful question. And I said, mate, I don't know. I somehow figure all of this stuff that I have been learning is my insurance for the future. And who knew it? I mean, in Australia, there wasn't a speaking industry at that stage. But everything I was doing actually prepared me to develop a curriculum to be able to bring to people and to be my own teacher. So our learning is our insurance for the future. No matter, you don't have to have a backpack for 7 years, but you can. But it is our insurance for the future. And that ongoing learning in today's world, it's just so fast paced. Everything shifts and changes. To remain open to the learning you can do and embrace new learning, to actually stretch yourself beyond. I think so. Those years of travel, the people I met, the wonderful places, it really developed me with a love of the diversity of human beings and finding ways for that diversity. What are the links? What are the connections? What's the teamwork and the collaboration? And at our very best, we can be very, very good at that. At our very worst, it's easy to separate people, divide people, and create a binary good, bad, right, wrong. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. But finding that way for human beings to collaborate and connect and then be at our very, very best. Who
Yeah,
knew that that's what travel taught me?
yeah. Well, you talked about some hot spots, Israel and Ukraine. So your friend who's Ukrainian, is he? I mean, he's not safe in either place, right?
He's living in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
He hates what's happening in the world. He said I saw him a few years ago, and we speak every week. And Zhenya, my friend, and I speak to him in my mind, and he features in every presentation. But he said, Glenn, we who believe in together, we who believe in people, we have to get better at getting our message across, because they are winning. It's an easier message to get across a message of divide. It's a harder message to get of connect. And I think he's right.
Scare people than to bring people together with common solutions.
Yeah.
And that's what our media in the U.S. feeds on, frightening people. And, everything's fear-based. It's not good. There's no way to come together in those kind of, circumstances.
Yeah, very easy. And I think my whole world and life has been really about finding the connectivity and going beyond the divisive brain, the binary brain. It's very easy to push that button because it's primal within us. Protect yourself, isolate yourself, but the bigger, broader sky message, grounded to the earth message, finding ways to be together, not only as human to human, but human to nature, human to planet, human to the sky, human to the ground. And that's a far trickier way to live. It's a far more complex way, but boy, it's a far more exciting adventure too.
Yeah, you were fortunate to get to meet many different people types through all your travels and living amongst people and all. So, I was in Israel myself a little more than a year ago, last March of 2023. We were there for a few weeks, and I'd never been there before because all the biblical sites and stuff that we learned of long ago. But the thing that fascinated me so much is there's the ancient part of Israel, and then there's Tel Aviv, which is like the mecca of technology and development, and so many amazing things that they're doing, in the tech industry through Tel Aviv. So anyway, it was really an interesting juxtaposition of, like the old world and the new world. So we enjoyed that trip a lot. Well, Glenn, tell us a little bit about what you do now. Obviously, you've spoken all over the world. You have had TV shows, radio shows, etc. How did you get into that aspect of your career?
Yeah, I was, because I learned how to speak Hebrew and picking apples on a kibbutz, the guy next to me says, "Oh, you ought to go and work on a summer camp in America." And he explains what that is. And I said, "Oh, sounds fantastic. I mean, how much is it going to cost me?" He said, "No, they'll pay you." No, not very much, but they'll pay you. And I got employed at Blue Star camps in North Carolina, and I ended up working there 4 summers. And
was that a Jewish camp? Was it for Jewish children?
It was a Jewish summer camp because
you said you spoke Hebrew. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not Jewish, but
a
Kalgoorlie kid who can speak Hebrew. I mean, they'd never pass
with an Australian accent.
But and it was just staggering. These intense environments. It was kind of like kibbutz but on steroids, if you like, an intense environment for 8 weeks where friendships are formed for life, and deep friendships. So I had all these incredible experiences, and I got a phone call from my brother, and my brother never rings me up, and Gary rings me and says, "You need to come home to be best man at my wedding. And I've got this program that I want to run, and I'd like you involved in it." So Gary, my brother, took after my Nana. Nana was an entrepreneur, had businesses, sold businesses, and Gary's been very that entrepreneur spirit. And this kibbutznik goes back to Australia to be best man at his wedding. And I'm this program that he's running, I can instantly see how we can make it more meaningful for people in different ways. So I become a presenter and a writer of that curriculum. I'm interviewed on a TV show about my travels, and the producer, director of that television program I met on that day, and 3 months later, she becomes Lindy Capelli. So Lindy Hawkins becomes my wife, and my life changes. I think I'll be running this program with my brother. I'll be running a youth program that I've written, and I'd be doing what we call, I think in America you call it substitute teaching, but we call it relief teaching in Australia. But somehow my program really hitting the right messages for people and families. And I had always said to the young people in the program and the parents in the program, give things a go, give things a shot. And I'd torn out a thing in my newspaper about applying for a Sir Winston Churchill study fellowship. Anyone can apply for them. You've got to, and you can go away to somewhere in the world, learn something meaningful, bring it back to community. So I'm so busy, and I'm saying, oh, I'll get around to that. I'll get around. And then one day I'm sitting and I look at it and I think, I'm telling these kids to give things a go. I've got to give this a go. So I sit down, I get on my typewriter in those days, and I type out my application. I get to go to an interview, and I receive a Sir Winston Churchill study fellowship to go back to America to study ways and means of learning that are going to accelerate and deepen our learning, particularly for teenagers, language skill, all kinds of learning. And because it's Sir Winston Churchill, every university I send a letter to, every person I send an invite, can I do this? Would you help me learn this? They open the door.
Yeah.
And this incredible thing to, that moment where I'm so busy with sitting down, and actually, because I was telling the kids, give things a go, I gave things a go. The message you're about, you have to live. And who knew that this Sir Winston Churchill Study Fellowship, as part of it, I did a presentation in America. The professor said, listen, we've got a conference on in Chicago. Can you speak at it? Then they say, we've got a conference in Boston. Can you speak at it? The Boston people they go back to Denver and go, well, listen, I saw this guy. He'd be great for our TV show. And then we do that, and then we
lovely.
get invited
Just
to
build
write
from
one.
there, yeah.
Things lead to things when you're
Yeah,
connected to people.
So let me ask you a question. So they say that public speaking is what most people fear more than anything else. How did you feel that first time they wanted to take you to, what'd you say, Boston, to speak on a stage to a group of people? Was that new to you, or had you had any experience with that?
I think for all of the teachers out there, sometimes teachers think, I couldn't do that, or I can't. If you're a teacher, and a good teacher, and you're in front of kids and you're in front of teenagers, and you can engage them and you can help them learn deep stuff, you've got an amazing array of skills. Now, some teachers are great, I can teach, but then getting out on a big stage, they say, okay, it's no different really.
A little intimidating.
It can be, but I always, the first time I spoke to the staff at Wanneroo Senior High School, I was 21 years of age, and the principal was impressed with my ethos, if you like, as an educator. And he said, I want you to speak to the whole staff. And, I'm standing up there, my hands shaking like this, physically shaking. And I said and everyone could see the hand shaking. And I looked up and I said, I don't drink.
That's a good icebreaker. Yeah.
Now, I didn't drink at all. I didn't touch alcohol until I was 30 in any way. But as soon as the audience laughed, the hand stilled. And I think it's true to me to this day that every time I go on stage, there'll be something early where you connect people through laughter, through humour, and then it's like, we're together. We're a team. We're all in this. And sometimes, yes, there will be people sitting there like this, I'm not going to lie, but a bit of a smile opens up, and somewhere inside that human being, there is a sense of humour.
Yeah.
Somewhere deep inside there is a sense of humanity, and that's what I present to, and until they then decide they're going to show it to the world.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, you were just, that's your job, is to be a professional speaker. I know you slowed down now in these years, you're not traveling as much and all, but was it hard to get continual speaking engagements, or was it, because a lot of people who are listening to this want to be a speaker. And
Yeah.
so they, you know, is it a constant hustle trying to get a gig, or, you know, how does that work, or how did it work for you?
Yeah, I think in today's world, it to some extent it does seem like a constant hustle. But and if it had been that when I was younger, I wouldn't have done it. I had a belief that if your message was good and your methodology was really good, then it would spread. And because we were presenting with physicality and humor and musicality, it was different. There was a bit of a uniqueness. And I encourage everyone to find their uniqueness. And I always said, the more you do, the more you will do, which was good, because we gradually built up. And I did a conference. I learnt that there was Professional Speaking Association. I joined, and we were in Australia, the first national conference I ever went to. Bob Johnson, an American speaker, he said, if any of you see, you know, got a colleague who says they've got more than 6 bookings, they're lying. Nobody's got more than. And I was thinking, hold on, we got 26. So and he said, and if they're not lying, they need to put their prices up. And it was like, okay, there's this world, and what we're doing is connecting with people in a slightly different way. And the industry grew, and the more I was doing, the more I was doing. So in today's world, we live in now Denmark, 5 hours drive from Perth, probably the most isolated place around, but it's just magnificent. It's a very healthy way of living. And we say yes to certain things. You know, we've got old clients who've been together. If educators ask me, we go in front of them. We go out and we go to schools, communities. And we fortunately, through my colleagues, one of them said, you know, YPO are looking for people to speak. This is Young Presidents Organisation, huge international body. And I went down to New Zealand and did one of their family universities. And these are the people of influence. You know, they just go, okay, well, 6 degrees of separation. No, they're 2 degrees of separation for any human being on the planet. And they just went, okay, you got to come to America. You're coming over here. You're doing this. You're doing that. And we ended up touring all through Asia, India. And it's just amazing, because you weren't just working with business people. We were running a family workshop as well.
Wow.
And it was just such an exciting thing. And, you know, that, hard work, but that opens the doors. And these are real life human beings. And there was sort of people going, hey, listen, we got a school in Indonesia. Can you go over and do something there? So Lindy
Which
and I,
takes you back to your educator roots, right?
And I always, you know, some people say to me, you know, you left teaching for the money. And I said, listen, I've never left teaching. I've never left teaching.
Yeah.
I just wrote a curriculum that there was nowhere to teach it, and I had to find a way to teach
To
it.
get it out there, right? So I'm going to ask you
so-
about the National Speakers Association, because they have chapters all over the United States, and you were very active and prominent in that group. So did you go there to get training on how to be a speaker, or what did it provide you?
When I was on my Churchill Fellowship in America, the group that I joined, if you like, my collaborators were the International Alliance for Learning. These are people who are looking at methodologies of learning, and amazing human beings. I mean, it led me to people like Howard Gardner and Bob Sternberg and Dr. Marion Diamond, one of the first women in neuroscience. And I wanted that sort of connectivity. And I have it in Australia. So when I got back and I was doing stuff, a friend of mine rang me and said, listen, I'm supposed to be speaking at a chapter of the National Speakers Association, now Professional Speakers Association, and but I can't do it. Can you do it? And I went along and presented about methodology that they hadn't really thought about, and I thought, here's a group that could be the same, my connectivity. And I made them, and then I thought, there's not enough method here. And one of the guys, wonderful Matt said to me, Cap, don't leave the organisation, change it.
Wow.
Make it happen. So we started to really get methodology into the Professional Speakers Association. And I was very fortunate because of the uniqueness of how I do what I do, that awards came away. And I became the 12th member ever to get a life membership. There's now 14 in Australia. The Australian body's linked to all the internationals. And who knew that there's this billion dollar industry?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't even know it existed.
That's amazing. And that's such a great story, because what you're telling me is you just walk through the next door and it presented opportunities, and the next door and the next door. And then you end up having this incredible life where you're traveling all over the world to deliver these high impact messages. I mean, it's got to be so gratifying.
It's extremely gratifying, and it enables us to do stuff. I mean, we learnt about an Australian guy who was building schools in the south of Bangladesh where no schools had ever existed before, and particularly making sure that girls were attending these schools. So we got in touch with them, and we built a school on Bowler Island in Bangladesh, and we got 300 kids who attend that school every day, never miss a moment, and another 100 children come every day and queue up at the windows in order to learn what's happening. Yeah, and that's a message for us all. Yeah, so anytime, if I'm having a rough time or tough moments, I look to the sky, I keep grounded to the earth, and I think of the kids in Bangladesh and just go, queue up at the windows, mate. There's some learning for you to do here. Grit it.
So you really have had a lot of opportunity to use your impact to influence the world. And I love what you're saying about the children in Bangladesh. When you educate somebody, it goes generational. It just goes on and on and on. And in a lot of places in the world, they don't have secure education. It can't be counted on and all, especially for girls. But so how do you feel like you're using your influence now, Glenn, in order to make those, big waves, as I would say?
Well, in sign language, my signing teacher, Carol Chittleburrow, she said two things. First of all, she's born deaf and speechless. She said, I feel so sorry for you hearing speaking people because most of you are boring. And she said, we might just talk, but in the deaf community, you've got to bring your emotion to it.
Yeah.
And she said, if you don't know a word in signing, you can make it up. So we made up. The word Kaizen is a real word, Japanese, Chinese symbols, and it means, and signing, it's a little bit of improvement every day. And you celebrate each tiny little improvement. And that's the thing. It takes this, and then it can kick into this, So sometimes, we're invited to go to conferences. We present to the people, give them messages that they can learn not only for their workplace, but for them as a human being, as a parent, as a partner. And when people own it for themselves, I think they then own it for the workplace even more. And then incredible things can happen from it. So yes, we do that, but at the same time, there's Probus as an international group where all retirees go, and my local town, they invited me to speak to the Probus group. So we choose what we do for pro bono, and we have some rules around that, but it's equally as exciting to go in front of a group of 60, 80-year-olds to talk about life and learning and ongoing learning, as is to go to a big conference or a YPO family university. Human beings, we can reach.
That's awesome.
If you can reach a 17-year-old, well, even better, because they can be a tough audience.
Oh, you think? Yeah, I would think so. Well, Glenn, thank you so much. I mean, to wrap it up, I'm going to ask you a few just rapid fire questions to help the audience get to know you in a different way. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give it
Cat or dog?
Cat.
Cat? Ooh, you're the first cat person. I'm glad to have you here. Okay.
We had Murray Cat for years. I wrote a radio show
A
about him.
meerkat?
Yeah, Murray Cat was a ripper. And you know, some people hate cats, but Murray Cat taught us messages in life. So
Yeah.
we made him famous in Australia.
Oh, you did? Okay, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Summer or winter?
All seasons. I'm an
All
all
of
season
them.
guy. You know, can't be binary on that one. It's all of them. And the Noongar here in Australia, they've got 6 seasons.
Oh.
So not just our 4, 6 seasons, all combining.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Netflix or a movie theater?
Netflix.
Netflix. Home on the couch with some popcorn. That sounds pretty good.
Well,
Okay.
you see, if I'm at a picture theatre and people are making noise, then the woman next to me will go, "These people are making noise. These people are eating their popcorn," you know. And it's far better for that woman next to me to be sitting on a couch at home.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Glenn. Window or aisle seat?
Aisle.
Aisle. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Always morning.
Always morning. Well, yeah, it's really early there right now. So you are a man of many talents, and you've used those really well. But what is something that you cannot do?
Yeah, that's a wonderful stumping question.
Do you know what you know how most people answer that? I can't tell you how many people have told me that they say, "I can't sing." And I'm like, wow, there's like a thread going here. Can you sing, Glenn?
Hey, listen, I spoke in Seattle and I said, we're all going to sing a song. And I said, listen, I'm not great at singing. I mean, I'm deaf in upper registers, so my voice just sounds magnificent to me. And this chap, and I said, you know, but I can't sing, but we're going to sing. And this chap came up afterwards and he said, I want to thank you for saying that you cannot sing and then for singing. He said, because I come to a lot of these events and people often say they cannot sing and then they sing and they sing beautifully.
Wow.
But you were being honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, no, I love to sing. We can all sing.
I love to sing. I just can't do it very well.
Or not,
yeah.
It's another thing.
Well, this has been great. So where can our audience find you if they want to connect and learn more?
Probably the best thing these days would be LinkedIn. Glenn Capelli, 2 N's in Glenn, yep. 1 N from Glenn Miller, 1 N from Glenn Ford, musician and an actor. Anyway, so Glenn Capelli on LinkedIn, then zip me a message and we'll send you my direct email. It's just wonderful to be able to talk with you, Nancy. It's wonderful that we can connect across the world.
It is.
And help people get messages where they can connect and use their influence in their life in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Glenn, again for your time, and to our audience for your attention. If you or someone you know wants to write a book, that's what I do as my profession. I offer my clients a white glove service to write, edit, publish, market, and distribute their books worldwide. So you can find my contact information in my LinkedIn profile as well. And there's also a link to schedule a strategy session with me if you just want to chat about your book ideas. So thank you for your time. You've been watching Masters of Influence with Nancy Erickson. See you next time.